Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for our very first day of daily Hour of Devastation spoilers. So, Hour of Devastation spoiler season isn't supposed to start for quite a while, actually, like another month or close to a month, but today, Wizards on their French site put up this advertisement for the standard showdown that's upcoming, and that advertisement had 3 new cards, not just 3 new cards, but really powerful chase cards from Hour of Devastation. So, we have some new cards to talk about. Wizards did realize their mistake and took down the cards after a few minutes, but it was too late. They're already out there. Everyone's talking about them. So let's start breaking down new cards from Hour of Devastation. And first up, we have maybe the most anticipated card from the entire set. The new Nicol Bolas. Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh. So we have a 7 mana Grixis Walker, which makes sense for Nicol Bolas. And it does a ton of things. The +2 lets you generate card advantage. You reveal cards or exile cards from the top of your opponent's library. Once you hit a non-land, you can cast that card for free. So very high variance. You could hit a Toolcraft Exemplar, or you could hit an Ulamog. Either way, you get to cast it for free, but it still is +2 draw a card, essentially. And not just draw a card, but cast a card. +1, your opponent kind of gets mind rotted, except they have to exile the cards. You exile 2 cards from your opponent's hand. -4 allows you to deal 7 damage to an opponent or a creature they control. And then the -12 exiles all non-land permanents an opponent controls. So very big, very expensive, has a lot of stuff going on, 4 abilities, pretty exciting. So this is, of course, the 3rd installment of Nicol Bolas. We had the original, Nicol Bolas, the book-reading dragon from back in Legends, then Nicol Bolas Planeswalker, which was 8 mana from Conflux, and was pretty powerful in its own right. So I think that Nicol Bolas compares favorably with past versions of himself. It's very strong. The question is, what does this compare to in terms of gameplay? And I think the best comparison I can come up with is Karn Liberated. So the things that Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, does are very similar to what Karn Liberated does. Of course, they're the same amount of mana as well, although Karn is easier to cast, so I don't think we're going to see Nicol Bolas showing up in Tron or anything like that because of the mana cost, but they're both 7 mana. They both have plus abilities that exile cards from the opponent's hand. Nicol Bolas gets 2, Karn just gets 1. They both have negative abilities that get rid of an opponent's permanent. Nicol Bolas has a downside of not being able to nuke a land. However, it has the upside of going at the opponent's face to finish off the game. 7 damage is a lot of damage, and I could definitely imagine scenarios where you just play Nicol Bolas, 7 your opponent, win the game. And then they both have -12 abilities that sort of restart the game. Nicol Bolas just exiles all your opponent's stuff, which should let you win the game. Unless you're super far behind somehow, but you have a Nicol Bolas, so you shouldn't be. That should just win you the game. The one-sided wrath, exiling everything. The advantage in Nicol Bolas compared to Karn is it generates card advantage, which is something that Karn can't really do. So the ability to just plus it, and be able to draw an extra card and cast that card for free, even if it's not a very good card, is just a really powerful ability. The other thing is, Nicol Bolas, if you plus it right away, comes in with 9 loyalty, which is amazingly hard to deal with. Plus, by the time you're to 7 mana, you're pretty much in the late game. Most opponents probably aren't going to have a ton of cards in their hand, so if you're worried about a Ruinous Path type of factor, never to return, killing your Nicol Bolas, the +1 is likely going to get those cards out of your opponent's hand, and then it's just going to be super hard for your opponent to deal with Nicol Bolas. The +2 protects it by taking up, so I think it's very strong. Of course, this strongness is counteracted by the massive mana cost. So you do got to be able to get to 7 mana and cast it without dying, which is a challenge in a world of Aetherworks Marvel. So I wanted to talk a bit about Marvel because this was one of the big questions about Nicol Bolas, is people were saying, oh, Marvel, people just marvel into Bolas. But when it comes right down to it, I don't think Nicol Bolas is actually that good with Marvel. I mean, it's fine. Anything that's like 7, 8, 9, 10 mana is going to be good with Marvel because you're getting a discount on it. And Nicol Bolas is super powerful, but it isn't as immediately game-winning, I don't think, as Chandra or as Ulamog, of course. The thing with Nicol Bolas is, if you get it off your Marvel, it doesn't immediately just like wrath your opponent's board. The best you can do is get rid of one permanent, or maybe make a blocker with the +2. So unlike Chandra, which pretty much clears a whole board of zombies, or Ulamog, which gets rid of 2 permanents and gives you an indestructible blocker, so it's kind of 3 attackers out of the way, I can definitely envision situations where you Aetherworks Marvel, hit Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh, and still just die on the backswing because it's only getting rid of one thing. So it's not that it's bad with Marvel, but I think it is less good than the rest of the cards that you would probably hit with Marvel right now. So maybe after rotation, but for right now, I think it's behind Chandra and Ulamog in terms of good Marvel hits. One last thing about Nicol Bolas before we move on. Dark Intimations was a card that was hopefully going to make sense once we saw the new Nicol Bolas Planeswalker, but it's still not very good. Getting +1 loyalty on Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh, it's semi-relevant. It does let you get to the ultimate in 2 turns of +2ing instead of 3. It does allow you to -4 twice instead of once, so it is relevant, but I was hoping it would be more impactful. Something like, oh, if you have Dark Intimations, you'd be able to ultimate right away. Even if you have 4 Dark Intimations in the graveyard, you still don't get to ultimate Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh, so a little bit disappointed about that. But overall, Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh, super powerful, super exciting, and I think it'll see a reasonable amount of play in Standard in the way that Karn Liberated did and Ugin did, where in specific decks that are built to getting to Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh, it's going to be incredibly powerful and difficult to beat, but you can't just slam it in every deck because it's so expensive. While Nicol Bolas was probably the most exciting card that got spoiled today, we do have a couple other cool ones. We got another Planeswalker, and the most exciting thing about Samut the Tested is it's a new Planeswalker. It's not part of the Gatewatch. It's a brand new thing. So we have a 4-mana walker with 4 loyalty in the Gruul colors, so you got to pay 2 red and green to cast it. The abilities, though, are a little questionable. So we have +1, you give a creature double strike. -2, you deal 2 damage, divided as you choose between 1 or 2 creatures or players. -7, you get to tutor up 2 creatures or planeswalkers, put them directly on the battlefield. So, we'll talk about the ultimate in a minute. However, if you consider Samut the Tested's other abilities, they're not very exciting on a 4-mana planeswalker. The +1 is Assault Strobe, which is fine, but Assault Strobe has a big limitation of being sorcery speed, as does Samut. If your opponent can tell which creature you're going to double strike, it's a little bit worse. It does work fine with like Verdurous Gearhulk and big trampling things is kind of scary, but for the most part, it's not a super exciting +1. And then the -2 being Fork Bowl is just not good enough. 2 damage, divided as you choose, just doesn't really protect Samut is the biggest problem. Like, yeah, I guess it can protect it if your opponent has, I don't know, 2 Servo tokens, but it's not going to protect it from Sylvan Advocates, Grim Flayers, let alone Ulamogs and Gearhulks and all the big stuff. So I think that's going to be a big problem with Samut in Standard. Maybe in a really aggressive deck, if you can get in big trampling creatures like a Curve of Lathnu Helion, and then immediate playing Samut, giving it double strike, hitting for 8. Like, maybe there's some top end of a really aggressive list that could use Samut, but it's not a kind of planeswalker that can just sit out there because it doesn't defend itself well enough at all. On the other hand, there is something I really love about Samut, and this is probably more relevant in Modern, but it is super sweet with Doubling Season. So we've played the Doubling Season Planewalker deck in the past, and Samut is another Planeswalker that ultimates right away, and not only does Samut ultimate right away, its ultimate gets us more Planeswalkers, so if we Samut, we ultimate right away. We can get a Jace and a Nahiri, which both ultimate right away. Jace gets something from our deck, something else from our deck. Also, Nahiri can get Emrakul, kill our opponent. We can even Samut, ultimate, get another Samut along with another Planeswalker, ultimate the Samut and the other Planeswalker, get another Samut, get another Planeswalker, so we can just chain together an ultimate like 15 Planeswalkers in a turn, which, yeah, probably overkill, not necessary to win the game, but it is pretty sweet what Samut can do in a Doubling Season Planeswalker deck. And then, it can also be used to set up creature combos. So if we can ultimate Samut, you can search for 2 creatures, maybe a Kiki-Jiki and a Restoration Angel, you go infinite, a Kiki-Jiki Deceiver Exarch, you go infinite, and just win the game that way. So I don't know if that will be good enough for Modern. The big problem is, again, it doesn't defend itself. You got to plus 3 times, that's a lot of turns of living to be able to ultimate. So I don't know. On paper, at first glance, Samut doesn't look like one of the more powerful planeswalkers we've seen recently in a vacuum, but as a top end in an aggro deck, could have some potential in Standard. In Modern, I think it's mostly a combo piece with Doubling Season, or maybe somehow setting up creature combos that we were just talking about. Our last card today, not a mythic, but a rare, Bantu's Last Reckoning, and this card is pretty crazy. 3 mana, Wrath. 3 mana Wrath. Wizards doesn't even give us 4 mana Wraths anymore, and they gave us a 3 mana Wrath. The downside is, lands that we control don't untap during our next untap step. So there is a big downside. You get to sweep the board for only 3 mana, but in a lot of situations, you're going to have to skip your next turn, essentially. So, is Bantu's Reckoning good enough for Standard? And there's a big problem. And the problem isn't with Bantu's Reckoning, which is really powerful. If your opponent has a board full of zombies, sweeping them away is going to be super helpful. There's lots of situations where it's good. The bigger problem is, a lot of the best decks in Standard are relying on Heart of Kirin, getting an ally of Zendikar, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, and these are all permanents that Bantu's Last Reckoning doesn't really deal with. I mean, your Wrath could be 1 mana. It could be free. It could be free and untaps your land, so it's like a Dark Ritual, and it still wouldn't deal with Heart of Kirin and Ulamog. So the problem with Bantu's Reckoning right now in Standard is Wraths just are not that effective because of the other cards in the format. However, I am pretty excited about the possibility of Bantu's Last Reckoning in Modern. So there's this card called Toxic Deluge, which is a semi-legacy staple, and it's also a commander staple. It's very powerful because you get to sweep the board for 3 mana. Bantu's Last Reckoning kind of gives us a modern version of that. The downside, obviously, is skipping your next turn, but if your opponent is playing a deck where they go turn 1 Goblin Guide, turn 2 Burning Tree Emissary, Bushwhacker, hit you for like 12 damage or something, in that situation, playing Bantu's Last Reckoning instead of a 4 mana Wrath like Damnation is super huge. It's the difference between winning and losing the game, and in that situation, since your opponent just spewed their hand, skipping your next turn probably isn't too big of a deal. I mean, when you're choosing between skipping a turn and losing the game, skipping a turn's better, even though it's very painful. So I'm excited to the potential of Bantu's Last Reckoning in Modern, probably as a sideboard card in most decks, but 3 mana is as cheap as it gets for this effect, even with the downside. So I think that it's going to be exciting. I'm not sure how good it'll be in Standard just because of what the format looks like, but that can change with rotations and bannings and who knows. But right now, I'm mostly excited about this for Modern. In Legacy, I think you just go Toxic Deluge. It gives you more control. You can kill tokens, leave your Tarmogoyf alive. You don't have to skip your turn. But that's where I see Bantu's Last Reckoning, is it's the modern version of Toxic Deluge. So anyway, that's our daily Hour of Devastation spoilers for today. So we probably won't be back with this for a while. Like I said in the intro, these are apparently accidental leaks. Wizards has taken them down, but they were on an official Wizard site, so they are essentially confirmed because of that. And yeah, so let me know, what do you think? What do you think of the new Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh? Is it what you were expecting? Is it exciting? Is it playable? Do you want to hit it off Marvel? What about Samut? Is it a good Planeswalker, or just sweet because it's a non-Gatewatch new Planeswalker? And how about Bantu's Last Reckoning? Is there a chance that that's better in Standard than I think? Will you play it in Modern? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.